Hi, everybody. So today I would like to discuss oil prices and inflation. It is commonly said, particularly in the financial and economics community, that rising oil prices can cause inflation. The argument is that because oil goes into virtually everything that's produced, either directly or indirectly through transportation. Everything has to be transported. Because oil is a component of everything that's produced, that when oil prices go higher, that can push the price of the goods higher, and you can have overall price inflation from that. Well, I want to explain here today how that is not the case. Rising oil prices do not cause price inflation. So, first, it is theoretically possible that they could. I mean, it is a logical argument that if the price of oil went higher and higher, then the cost of the things would increase in price. Okay, that's logical. But first, um, oil prices don't go that much higher that quickly most of the time. And by the way, oil prices now are about half of what they used to be. I could be way off on that. Let me check quickly. Yeah, about half of what they used to be. Over time, oil prices don't go up that much every year. And for many years or even decades, they stay rather flat. And as far as oil being part of the goods that we buy, oil certainly is a large component of things like airplane tickets, where 25 to 40% of the ticket cost are oil prices. And it's kind of high for food. 5 to 10% is oil prices, directly or indirectly. That includes fertilizer, fuel, packaging, and so forth. But clothing, 3 to 8%, electronics, 1 to 5%. So as you can see, on average, we're talking that the average good maybe has 10%, probably 5 to 10%, maybe less. And so if oil prices double, okay, well, that increases the cost by maybe 5%, 7%. But here's the thing, here's the key, and the main point of doing this video. To spend more on oil prices means spending less on other goods. There's only so much money in the economy at any given time. So if you're paying more for crude oil or the products that contain crude oil, you're paying less for something else. And if everything contains crude oil, that means you're buying a lower volume. You're spending less because everything costs more now, so you're having to spend less. But the dollar you allocate to the increased oil prices, you're taking away from spending somewhere else, even if it's only the quantity, or even if it's only a reduction in the quantity that you're spending. The proof of this is that when they say the inflation that we have is caused by crude oil, this is usually when GDP, when real GDP is increasing, which is really to say when the total number of goods and services produced and supplied is increasing. So if you have people buying as many or more goods than ever, and prices are rising at the same time, see, because when the supply increases, prices should go lower. So if people are still buying as many goods, the price is going higher. That's not because crude oil is pushing prices higher. It's mathematically impossible for crude oil, an increase in crude oil, to push all prices higher. Again, because you have to reduce spending. There's only so much money to be spent. So if you have $100 in an economy and the price of inputs goes up because of crude oil prices, you still only have $100 to be spent. So if you're spending $1 more on average on goods, well, that's $1 that's not being spent on as many goods. Again, the quantity you're buying will fall. So the total number of goods, the total spending is the same. So no matter what happens, unless the supply is really reduced, um, we'll put it this way: the only way you can have inflation is either with more spending, more total spending, or less total supply. So if you're having the same total supply or an increase in supply while prices are still rising, that means the spending, the total spending is increasing. There's no other explanation. I'll repeat that. If the total supply of goods is the same or higher than last year, but the average price, the CPI, is higher, the only way it can be higher is by more money existing in the economy. That more money comes from only one place, the central bank. Companies don't produce money. They make goods and services. They produce goods and services. They're making physical things and they're making services. They don't make money. So if there's more money being spent, it can only come from one place, and that's the people who make the money. That's the central bank or the Federal Reserve in the United States. So if there's inflation while the supply of goods is increasing, which it usually is year after year, the only source of that is the central bank printing money. It's adding money to the economy faster than companies are adding goods and services. So that's the lesson. And don't fall for the argument that crude oil prices are raising the CPI. It does not happen. It virtually cannot happen. And what people are really doing is either they're misled or they're misleading you to obscure the real cost, the real cause of the inflation. And that is the central bank, the government printing money, which is virtually always the only reason for inflation. There is really no other reason in our world that we have inflation. There are other reasons you can have it, like a reduced supply, but since we don't have a reduced supply, the only reason can be the central bank. So, support getting rid of central banks. There's no reason to print money, but don't blame crude oil. Crude oil is rising in price because of inflation. The money that's being printed is also going into the commodity markets, also goes into the stock markets. That's why the price of stocks go higher and higher and higher. It's not a growing economy, it's money flowing into those markets. So it also flows into commodity markets and pushes up the price of crude oil. So to argue that crude oil is pushing up price inflation is to say inflation is pushing up price inflation. Crude oil is going higher because of the inflation, because of more money flowing into those markets, just like it's flowing into the economy in general. So inflation is everywhere and always a monetary phenomenon controlled solely by the government's central bank. So that is always the cause, the government. Okay, thank you. Please like and subscribe and leave comments down below. Would be glad to discuss. Thank you. Bye.